High five to all the parents, siblings, grandparents, caregivers, and teachers who love someone with autism. You rock. Welcome to the webinar of Parental and Sibling Training for Autism. My name is Agrawal, and I'm a counseling psychologist associated with NeuroGen Brain and Spine Institute, Mumbai. When we talk about parental and sibling training, we see that we need to sensitize ourselves about sibling and parental issues which revolve around autism. More often than not, we focus on the child who's on the spectrum. So my belief that why do I need to talk about this? Because this is to address one of the most profoundly overlooked issues revolving around autism. In this webinar, we'll be understanding the importance of involvement of siblings with children who are on spectrum, understanding of issues of siblings and parents with children on spectrum, and understanding why is it so important to train them about autism. I will also tell a story about an 11-year-old boy who had a sibling on the spectrum who was 4 years old. The child on spectrum came for rehab therapy, and he used to always come along with his brother, but the brother used to sit in a corner watching the therapy. There had been instances where the child, the 11-year-old, threw more tantrums than the autistic child. That's when the parents realized that something is bothering the elder one, and that's when they took him for counseling. When they took him for counseling, they saw that the elder one was going through a lot of issues revolving with the sibling. He felt neglected, he felt sad, isolated, embarrassed, jealous. My motive of telling you this story is to understand that every child may not speak about it, but they are going through something that we really need to address. Moving on, when we first come to know that our child is on the spectrum, we experience a lot of grief, and we may not know, but there are stages of grief. As you can see in the picture, the first one is denial, second is anger, third is bargaining, fourth is depression, and fifth, lastly, is acceptance. When we speak about denial, in the first go, we are like, no, we don't want to accept that our child is autistic or it's on the spectrum. We will take a second opinion. The doctor is not correct. Gradually, when we accept a little bit that, you know what, this is the truth, we feel a lot of anger towards self, towards family. People who believe in God, sometimes they also blame the God and the fate, the destiny, that how can this happen to me? They move on to the third step of belief, which is bargaining. They do a lot of pleas, like saying, okay, I accept it, maybe I don't accept it. They are in the middle, in the midway. Sometimes they will want to accept that the child is going through a condition, sometimes they will want to deny completely. They try to see the pros and cons, but they are still stuck. When I go to the fourth stage, this is one disclaimer that I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm talking about how people feel immense sorrow, immense hurt. That's what happens when you gradually move in the stages of grief. And lastly, few of us reach to the level of acceptance. Few of us are just stuck on the first, second, third, or fourth level. Now you need to decide, looking at the picture, that where do you stand? Stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When we talk about siblings, many of us might question why is it important to involve them? They are themselves children. How can they be helping the child on spectrum? But that's not so true. I will give you a food for thought. How many times have we thought of the sibling who is not on the spectrum compared to the child who is on the spectrum? I'm sure most of us would say very rarely or less, compared less to the other child, because we believe they are independent. They can do their things by themselves. But there is one thing that I would like to tell you. Children with autism will learn more and sooner from siblings than parents. In many cases, children with autism find it easier to connect with their siblings and are likely to turn towards their sibling than parents if there is a marital discomfort in the family, if the parents are strict, if there is anything which is uncomfortable about the parenting or the environment they stay in. It happens that the child with autism will connect more to the elder sibling or the younger sibling. Importance of sibling relationship. Now there is this program called social learning program. When we talk about this program, we must think that there is always an option of involving your sibling with a child with autism more and more to see the benefits, which is two-way. Now, as you see here on the screen, observational learning and modeling behavior. When I talk about observational learning, it reflects in the elder sibling or the younger sibling, and the modeling behavior is mostly reflected in the child on spectrum. When you put them together and make them into a social play game or social activity, you will see that the child on spectrum is imitating everything the sibling is doing. On the other hand, the elder sibling or the younger sibling, they will see that the child cannot do many of the things, can understand more that he is having or she is having problems in these areas. So he is observing and learning about his own sibling who's on spectrum. This is what I mean to say, that observational learning involves thought process, whereas modeling behavior involves sheer imitation. Let's talk about role of siblings. Uh, we all must have had siblings when we were young. We still do. We know that there are perks, pros, and cons for having siblings. I believe one of the major good things about having a sibling is having a non-judgmental peer in the family. People outside will judge you for who you are sometimes, but there is one person who will not judge you, and that is your sibling. Elder siblings may also act as a role model to the younger ones. Even the younger ones, they can act as role models for the elder siblings who are on spectrum. As parents, we tend to develop social skills, but as siblings, we help them practice their social skills. They are open to new experiences if they have siblings in the household. Wherever the sibling goes, whatever the sibling does, it happens a lot of time that the child with on spectrum will accompany the sibling or will talk to more people, will experience new ideas, new situations as compared to a single child who's on spectrum. Lastly, academic help. Most of the autistic children do not get the correct guidance when it comes to academics because they are underestimated. But with an elder or younger sibling in the house, when they are studying, when they are learning, they also tend to again model the behavior, imitate the behavior, and improve in their academics because they know that there is one more child in the house who's trying to do the same thing. They learn their techniques, they learn their strategies. The sibling also gives a helping hand to the child on spectrum. It's a two-way street again. One of the major things why I chose to do this topic is the issues faced by siblings. A lot of us know that yeah, they do face issues. They do not have a normal childhood as we would have thought them to have. But let's talk about that in detail. Negative impact on siblings. There are two criteria. One, social problems and emotional problems. When we talk about social problems, we see siblings who have another sibling on spectrum. They feel a lot more socially withdrawn. They will not go out as much. They will not know how to initiate or sustain a conversation, which is our next point about poor social skills. Even if they initiate a conversation, they will not know how to continue. These two things come under the social problem aspect. When we talk about emotional problems, you can yourself see the list is pretty long. Beginning to read aggression and poor coping strategies, a lot of anger. Lot of anger. Why is this child in the house? Why do I have to deal with him? Poor coping strategies, depending on the age of the sibling, maybe resorting to outside people, different substances, not talking, getting detached from family. Compassion fatigue. Many of us must have heard this word, and many of us must have not. Compassion fatigue happens when you look around your family and you see a lot of people having so much stress. You feel their pain, you feel how your parents are dealing with the situation, you see your sibling who's on spectrum cannot do most of the things which your friends and their siblings can do. They get tired of understanding everything, and somewhere they feel that they should also be understood. This happens mostly in children, in siblings who are going through teenage. Moving on to feeling unheard, neglected, resentment. A lot of us already know that, but we don't give attention to that part because we are so busy focusing on the child on spectrum that we genuinely, unintentionally, but we leave the sibling feeling like that. We don't realize that he's feeling neglected, he's feeling the resentment towards their own sibling. Jealousy, that the child on spectrum is getting so much attention, is getting so much time of the parent, and I am not. And or embarrassed, I won't go out with that child. How will I face the people? How will I introduce my friends to that sibling of mine? What will they say? They'll make fun of me. Few feelings of siblings which they go through. Guilty for feeling negative feelings towards their sibling. Like us as adults, we have conscience. Even the kids have conscience, and they feel bad. How can I feel like this about my own sibling? Sibling may develop some secondary condition or traits that are associated with autism, for example, behavioral issues, temper tantrums, aggression, being the target of aggressive behavior. If the sibling is older, then again the sibling feels the younger one can hit me anytime. The sibling can hit me anytime who's on the spectrum because he doesn't understand that it may hurt me so much. A fear is always there in that child and having low self-esteem. All these things which have been listed down so far, they have a huge significant impact on their self-esteem. They do not identify with themselves as having a normal life, as having a normal family, which brings them down in many areas of their own life. Siblings with autism, issues faced by them, elder or younger than the child with autism. It is very true that if the child on spectrum is elder or younger, it has similar but yet different impact on the other sibling. Let's see how. If the sibling is older than the child with autism, she or he may experience burdened with responsibilities, subjected to over expectations by family and others, and also feel neglected. Why am I being given so many responsibilities, and why am I asked to do so many household chores just because I'm the elder one, just because you can't share the responsibility with the other one, just because he's special, he doesn't understand. Giving certain tasks to compensate for the work to the elder one, it really puts a burden on them. Over expectations. When we talk about over expectation, you will achieve A plus, you will achieve 90% because we don't have much expectations from the younger one who's on the spectrum. This puts a lot of mental pressure on the child and feeling neglected. They will because the parent is more concerned about the child who's young, who's on the spectrum, doesn't understand. They want to make him independent and they spend more time, more energy. So they are likely to feel much neglected. If the sibling is younger than the child with autism, again, it's a little different. She or he may experience unrealistic expectations. The elder child is on the spectrum. Still, you are giving me, I am the younger one. How can you give me so many things which I can't do? Going out, buying groceries, putting the table mats, so much work. It's not realistic. Had my elder one not been on the spectrum, you would have divided it. But here, you are giving me so many things which I don't think is appropriate to my age or abilities. Fear of being target from elder child. In cases the elder one is aggressive or hyper, the younger one will always live in a constant fear that he can hit me anytime, she can hit me anytime, biting, scratching. These things always play in the mind of the sibling. Frustration over no response from elder brother or sister. Like us, we have had siblings and we know that we can always go up to them and talk to them about our problems. But in this case, where the younger one is not on the spectrum, cannot do the same. He feels frustrated, she feels frustrated that I cannot talk to him or her because of the low understanding. I will have to use the outside resources. Learning bad behavior, attention seeking behavior. Because the elder one is using that, the younger one feels that if I want my parents' attention, if I want my parents' love, I have to do the same things what the elder one is doing. And so they start modeling the behavior. Regardless of the birth order, one commonly cited feeling among siblings is sibling rivalry, which is far more in the case if there is one child on the spectrum. Why to help the sibling? As we have spoken about this, but to go over through again, to understand their perceptions which have been overlooked, identify the red flags and prevent from further distress. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Healthy family dynamics, smooth interpersonal and intrapersonal communication, so that the child can come and talk to their parent or the other sibling or the relative, except going out to the friends or society. Now we have spoken about the issues, why is it important, but how to help the sibling, which is very important because we are doing a lot of efforts for the child on spectrum. But now we will focus about the solutions as to as parents what we can do to help the sibling. Set aside regular daily times, be it 10 minutes, half an hour. Make sure you sit with them, talk to them, and list down 3 positive things about them that you want to tell they did in the day. It's very important to boost their self-esteem. Take a few minutes to listen when sibling want to say something. It's not necessary that when you are setting aside the regular daily time, if the child is coming to you with a problem or with some excitement or with some news, make sure you do not shoo them away and tell them, give us, come back later. I'm busy right now. Take out 2 minutes, 5 minutes, address. If it's important, address it right away. If it's not that important, you can always explain the child that, you know what, this is keeping me busy. Can we talk about this later? Put that question rather than request. Make time for special activities preferred by the sibling exclusively. For example, taking to the pool. Now, when I say preferred by the sibling, I mean you want to take the sibling for maybe a drive or maybe a movie, but that is your preferred activity or your thinking that the child might like this. Always ask the sibling what do they want to do for a getaway. They can tell anything for cooking, pool time, movie time, but always ask them what do they want. Use a trusted babysitter or respite carer to look after child on spectrum for a day or weekend to spend a long day with other siblings. When I say this is a very important point, I mean that you should always spend more time. You should make sure that it's not always a 1 hour, 2 hour a day. Ask your child if you want more attention, if you want more time from me, more expression from me, and keep your child on spectrum with some trusted person and take the other sibling away for a weekend getaway so that they feel that, you know what, it's not just 1 hour a day or 2 hour a day. My parents can actually do that for me. Encourage closer relationships by looking for ways they can all play together, example blowing bubbles or playing with trains. Make sure both the children enjoy the activity. Otherwise, the sibling might feel neglected that, you know what, this is not my preferred activity. This is something only the child on spectrum can do, and that's why I'm being forced to do this. So make sure that activity is engaging both the siblings and it's preferred by both of them. Try not to accept aggressive or hurtful behaviors from your child who is on spectrum if you will not accept from siblings. This is again important because it puts some emotions in the sibling that everything is forgiven for him, but I am subjected to this cruelty. I'm using the word cruelty because the emotions as children they feel are far more extreme. They don't realize. So it's important that you set very fair family rules for all your children. If this is accepted by the child on spectrum, it is accepted by the sibling. Otherwise, it's not. Setting up family rules and responsibilities appropriate for age and abilities, over expecting, putting a lot of burden and responsibility on the other sibling just because the child on spectrum cannot do that is very inappropriate, if I can say so. Because if you're telling the child, the sibling, that you are supposed to do this and this for the entire day, the child might feel, why am I being put through so much burden? Lastly, empowering and educating the children how to handle situations. The last point is very, very important for a reason that if you don't make your child explain what is autism, what is this condition, what is the prognosis, it will be very difficult for them to accept it, to move on with it. They'll always have questions which will be unanswered, and when there will come a time that the parents will take a back seat and the child will come ahead and have to take the responsibility, they'll be lost. So it's very important to empower and educate the children about what is this condition. A few strategies to implement. You can see the mother and child cooking, swimming, playing Jenga. This is how you can engage with your child. The parents are listening to their child. When they are upset, they are acknowledging the feelings. When we talk about feelings, it's very important that as parents, you manage the negative feelings. Being aware of your children's feelings and acknowledging them is something every parent, irrespective of the spectrum, it should be done. Communicating with them that their feeling is normal, because at some point as parents, you must have also felt it in a non-judgmental way. You should talk to them, communicate. Maybe you can also do this, that when they are coming and telling you that I am feeling this certain way, you can always paraphrase and repeat it for them so that they understand what you have understood and they feel validated, they feel heard. Work together to come up with some positive outlets for children's feelings: drawing, painting, music, whatever seems comfortable. Some positive channeling outlet for the children who cannot express verbally. Share your own feelings to help them understand it's normal. If you feel embarrassed, there was a time I felt like that. If you feel angry, neglected, tired, there was a time when as parent even I felt that. So it's completely normal to feel that. Change in impact on sibling across lifespan. When siblings grow with their other sibling who's on spectrum, change and impact are the two constant factors which will always be there when there is a special needs child in the family. Again, it varies from childhood to adulthood. It may vary in intensity. In fact, according to a study, siblings who are aged 6 to 11 who had high functioning autism brother or sister displayed more behavioral issues as compared to children whose siblings were not on the spectrum. This is very surprising as we would not expect the result. But the reason behind this was they were more competitive. They felt less secure, so much negativity, so much jealousy. This is one result which actually was proven, that children feel very insecure, very jealous of high functioning autism siblings. Let's see how the change varies about impact. You will see here 4 pictures. There is a couple with a child. They had only one child. Then another child, the younger one, was born, and both the parents are busy with him, and the child is standing in the corner, feeling neglected, feeling isolated. In the third picture, you see the mother scolding the child as to why, what happened, you are responsible one, and the child on spectrum is standing behind crying because the child does not understand what is happening. What happens next is the sibling displaces the anger which was given by the parent on the child who's on the spectrum, because he's also young, he doesn't understand much. What I'm trying to say is that no matter how much you train, how much you educate, there will come a time where as parents, you will have to take a back seat, where the sibling will help the sibling grow up, grow old, be together, which is very important, which is why it is very important for us to build stronger relationships between them. Moving on to the next part, parental training. As parents, we have multiple roles, not just for the child on spectrum, for the other child, for each other, but 3 of them in my clinical experience is what I believe that is important: building strong rapport with and amongst the children, regulating self and children's emotions, developing social skills. As parents, we need to develop it, and then the sibling role comes in where they practice it. If you do the 3 of these as a parent, it is a sign of good parenting. Why is good parenting important? None of us have been taught. There have been no classes as such, but we have always heard from other people, be a good parent. There are a lot of benefits of good parenting. A, smooth marital relationship with spouse, a lot of less miscommunication, effective communication with children and spouse. You say clearly, perfectly what you want to tell them, what you're not liking, what you're liking. See, children are likely to be adaptive to difficult situations. This happens, in fact, this and the other one. Children are likely to have better coping strategies because they always know that they can come to you for suggestions. They have that road open. They don't have to go outside and seek resources, seek advices. They can adapt to difficult situations and they will have a better coping mechanism than the other children who do not get as good parenting. Fair and shared responsibilities among everyone. One of the good things about good parenting is that you know that nobody is feeling overburdened, overwhelmed, or no, there is not one person in the house which is not doing the work. That is what we call effective management. Issues faced by parents. Now, what issues when we spoke about siblings? They were also significant, but as parents, we face a lot more issues when we have a child on spectrum, starting with health issues, physical and mental. So many diseases, depression, anxiety, you get thyroid, diabetes, not because of the child, of course, but because you are dealing with so much stress, conflicts, interpersonal and intrapersonal. You are having a lot of conflict within yourself. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to deal with this? You also feel conflict with your spouse, with other people at work, with your children. Moving on to fatigue and burnout. You keep doing, you keep giving efforts, and there will come a time when you feel a lot tired. And still you drag yourself. You're tired, still you're dragging because it's a responsibility. Many parents experience burnout and they don't even realize that they are completely mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. That is what is burnout. Sharing uneven responsibility. I would like to tell you about this parent who told me that in a survey done on 200 mothers, it was reported that out of 200, 180 mothers say that we take most of the responsibility of the child. It is difficult for the father to sometimes accept, sometimes help, but there are instances where in families there is uneven responsibility. So the one parent feels a lot more burden, a lot more overwhelming emotions than the other families. Parents' mental set or cage. This is one of the things that hold the parent and the child back. When they keep themselves in a box that I can't go out of this, I cannot think out of this, my child can never be recovered, my child can do nothing, I can do nothing, I am feeling helplessness. They create a set, the cage themselves, and they lock themselves up into it. Despite of having the key with themselves, having so many resources outside, they put themselves in the situation unintentionally. Financial burden, many parents who cannot afford, this is an additional thing which has come to them. Hesitation, denial, low acceptance, all of us must have gone through it sometime, or maybe going through it at this point, that I don't want to go out in society taking the child sometimes. I don't want to accept that there is something wrong with my child, which is low acceptance. Cultural factors. When we talk about cultural factors, people who belong to a small town or lower socioeconomic background do not have that much education, understanding, openness to such a problem. This impacts the child, the family environment to a point that it gives more stress to the parent, to the child in their growth, in their development. There is no uniform decision making between the parents because the father is like, this happened because of you, this happened because of something, your family, and at the same time, there is no midway where the spouses meet about their own child. I want to take him for rehab, I want to take him for another religious thing, maybe he will get cured. They do not come on one midway. Cognitive errors. When we talk about cognitive errors, we see that I will list three of them down. There are many more which as parents we go through. One is minimizing the positive and magnifying the negative. Even if your child who's on spectrum will have certain good things, until and unless you're probed or asked, you will not point out the good things. You will always say the complaints the child cannot do. You can recollect the instances and you will see, yeah, this has happened. When I have spoken to other parents whose child was on spectrum, I have told that my child cannot do this and this, rather than saying that, you know what, my child can do this. Next cognitive error would be, why has this happened to me? Why? Like, was this fate, my destiny, the God? Why was this put on me? Third cognitive error, I may be blessed. That's why God has given me this child, because He must have seen the strength in me. It is a positive thing, but it's a defense mechanism you're using to dealing with the situation. Marital conflict, a lot of problem, marital discord between the husband and wife regarding the child. Parental insecurity and confusion. This happens rarely, but still it's a significant thing. Why? Because when we see parents meeting other parents, they see the child. The child can speak. The child can say hi and bye. The child can eat food by himself. My child cannot. There's slight insecurity. It happens. And confusion. Where should I take my child? What should I do? When will he recover? When will he be functioning? Will he be independent? A lot of thoughts happen in my head. Anger at self and other. I cannot deal with this. The parent feels like that I need to know the answer. So much hurt, so much anger. Everything is displaced. Lastly, guilt for feeling these things, for having so much issues in the life, for not being able to deal with it properly. A lot of us experience one of the major emotion, which is guilt. You can see the picture. The husband and wife is they're fighting, and there's a child who's on the spectrum who is not understanding what's happening, but the child on the other side is getting so much affected. That's the sibling that I'm talking about. That the child on spectrum might not understand, but the impact of these things, the three people in the picture, is happening to the child, who's happening to the sibling who's not on the spectrum. Issues faced by parents from different family structure. As you can see, there is an arrow which is reflecting the burden of care, the stress level of parents. Every family structure, every parent will have stress, but it varies. When we talk about joint family, if we compare it to nuclear family, they might not have that much stress because they have more social support, more acceptance. They will have more resources than compared to the nuclear family. When it comes to nuclear family, again, if the responsibilities are uneven, if they're not shared properly, it might feel as if the one parent is taking care of everything, feeling overwhelmed, overburdened. They have also low social support than compared to the joint family. When we talk about single parent, you can see they are the most stressed ones because they don't have anyone to share the responsibility from as the primary family. If they have a sibling and a child on spectrum, it gets very difficult. The single parent experiences, in my experience, a lot of stress, most stress. Among these three family structure, one thing which is common is the financial burden. It keeps on increasing and increasing as the family structure goes. How to help the parents? Forgiving, we have always heard of it, we have read about it, but we kind of underestimate it. When we talk about forgiving, we need to forgive ourselves that this is okay. As parents, we have this, we need to fix this. And forgiving others who are who are blaming you or who are giving you some sort of bad words, they are telling you something that is hurting you. You need to forgive themselves because you already have so much on your plate. You don't want to take additional things from outside people. Positive outlook. When we talk about positive outlook, we all know that we should have it, but how to have it? We need to be more solution focused rather than being problem focused. That's your first step to being positive, like being positive and having that outlook. We always tend to talk about problems first and then the solutions. That also happens very rarely because we are so stuck in the problem focused part that we forget that we need to go towards the solution. How to do that? We need to have goals for ourselves, for our children, for the family. Now, when I talk about goals, I have seen people saying that my goal is that my child should be independent. My child should be able to earn money. Nothing else I want. I want him to be functional enough to spend the life without being a burden on anyone. Well, that's not a smart goal. When we talk about smart goals, we talk about how we need the goal to be specific, we need the goal to be measurable, we need the goal to be attainable, we need the goal to be relevant and time bound. I will give you an example of a smart goal. A parent who says that I want my child to stop his hand flapping, or I want the child to start eating food by himself by 2 months. Even if it's just one bowl of porridge, he should be doing it. That's a smart goal. Why? Because I'm talking about one particular dish. I'm talking about time I am putting myself the goal for. How can I measure it? If my child is even having 3 spoons, I know I have reached 30% of my goal. It is attainable for the child rather than saying something which the child cannot achieve, not putting unrealistic ideas on the child, and relevant. If my child can speak and if I put that thing in the child's goal list that he should be able to sing songs or go out and give debates, it's not relevant because the child can already speak. Patience with child and self, you need to be a lot more patient than what you're now, which is the most difficult part. You have to be patient with yourself, not to displace the anger on the child or your spouse. You have to also be patient with the child in the sense that if the child is doing something which you are not liking, which is annoying you, irritating you, the child cannot understand, but you can, and you can pull yourself out of the situation, give a time out, and think, analyze. Meaningful self-care. Many of us would have thought that taking 10 minutes away from the day without the child, without the spouse, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, maybe just lying down watching something on the TV. When I say meaningful, it should make a difference. It should be something that you relax yourself with. Those 10 minutes should not be about distracting yourself from the day. It should be giving you something meaningful information, meaningful time with your own self. Taking frequent breaks or break away from routine, breaking away the monotony, getting up, helping the children, sending the spouse, cooking, taking care of the house. There should be breaks for you as well because at the end of the day, you are a human. When you go back to sleep, you want to look at yourself. You want to see that you are happy, your children are happy. You should not take the burden of everything on your own shoulders. Structuring daily routine to avoid feeling overwhelmed. This is very important because if you don't structure, you will feel overwhelmed. If you take out 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour on weekends or holidays to plan the week ahead for yourself, for your children, it will be much more easier for you to get through the week. Because every day getting up and setting goals, setting the management takes a lot of toll on your health, your mental health. So rather than doing it every day little by little, take half an hour on a Sunday or on a holiday and sit down and structure what is the routine, what are the goals you want to set so that you can feel relaxed throughout the week. Not underestimating the child on spectrum and overestimating the sibling. One of the most important thing, I will share a case with you. A parent came to me whose elder one was not on the spectrum and the younger child was. The elder one was doing his homework and the parent told me that I have to scold him so much to do his homework. He does not do it. And the younger one, he was also in senior KG, but the mother was like, I really have no many expectations from this child, but I have from this one. So I think I will push him more rather than him. It's okay. What can he do? He will not excel in his academics. I know. Why should I put my effort in there? So it's very important that you should not underestimate the child on spectrum. You never know that what the child on spectrum can do. and you're overestimating the sibling, thinking that he should excel in academics. But what if the sibling is good at something else? Talking to spouse about feelings, very, very important. If you don't communicate to your spouse, you will feel that built up inside you, which will somehow happen to displace itself on things which are not relevant or people who do not deserve that. It's always easy, it's always advisable to talk to your husband or wife, to tell them that this is what I have been feeling today. How was your day? I know this has been problem. This is how we can solve it. Being overt to both the children is another thing. When you say, I love you, I really care about you, you're special to me, to your child who's on spectrum, make sure you're doing that for the other sibling as well. It's very, very important. Otherwise, the child will again feel isolated or neglected. Whatever expression you have for the child on spectrum, keep the same for the other sibling. Being consistent in effort. One very important thing. What parents do, they try to take new things, new therapies, new people for the child to help the child. But they give up in a month or two sometimes because they feel it's not helping, it's not giving me any result. It's very, very important to be consistent and persistent in your effort. If you want to see the results, give it some time. Have some faith that this will work out. Give it some time. Keep your eyes and ears open. But do not make any rash decisions. Lastly, seeking professional help for people who are not understanding enough about the problem, how to deal with this problem, what to do about it. If you're having a lot of problems within the marital relationship or with the sibling or with other relatives, seek help. That's when the mental health professionals put a foot down that we are there to listen, we are there to guide you. All you have to do is just ask. With this, I end my webinar. Thank you so much. I would like to address all your questions at this point. So we have one question from Mr. Anil Ojha. How would you assess the difficulties in a child with autism? If you want to understand if the child is on the spectrum, there are three major areas which are mostly affected, which is social, which is your behavioral, which is your emotional. So if your child is having problems in these areas, communicating, speech, behavioral problems, not understanding, comprehension, you can always take the child to a psychologist, to a doctor who can assess the child and tell you whether he's on the spectrum or not. Anil Ojha has again asked any specific tools you recommend for that purpose. There are psychological tests available to assess if the child is on the spectrum, but they can only be used by a mental health professional. Tarun has asked, is it important for both partners to consider the values and understanding towards each other, or if one partner is enough with such qualities to make it long term? You make your hands clap with both. You need that understanding and value from each other. In case it's difficult, you can always find a midway and talk about it. All right, it looks like we are done with our question answer round. Thank you so much for attending. It was a pleasure meeting with you. Bye bye.